The sky above Prime burned orange and red. Explosions lit up the evening as another transport ship tried to escape and failed. Ambassador watched it fall from the sky, his three-fingered hands pressed against the command center window. Inside that ship had been 200 of his people. Now they were gone. Ambassador, the shields are down to 12%, his aide said. Her voice shook with fear. We have maybe an hour left. Turned away from the window. The command center was chaos. Officers ran between stations, trying to coordinate evacuations that kept failing. The Dominion had appeared 3 days ago with 40 warships. They demanded surrender. When they refused, the bombardment began. They were not warriors. They were traders, healers, and diplomats. Their ships carried medicine across the galaxy, not weapons. Their colonies had defensive shields, but those shields were never meant to withstand a military assault. They knew this. They always picked targets who could not fight back. Any response from the Council? Asked. Nothing, sir. They say they are monitoring the situation. Monitoring, that meant watching while his people died. The Galactic Council had protocols, procedures, and committees. None of those things would help right now. Another explosion shook the building, steadied himself against a console. On the main screen, he could see the ships in orbit. They were massive things, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They looked like tools built for killing, and that was exactly what they were. Sir, they are landing troops in the southern cities, an officer reported. Early reports say they are taking prisoners. Prisoners meant slaves. They did not believe in mercy or fair treatment. They conquered, they took, and they destroyed whatever they could not use. Made a decision. He walked to the communications station and pushed the officer aside. His hands moved across the controls, accessing a frequency he had been told never to use. Sir, what are you doing? His aide asked. Calling for help. But the Council said we should not contact them. They said it was too dangerous. More dangerous than this, pointed at the screens showing his burning cities. He sent the distress signal on the emergency band. It was a simple message with their location and the nature of the attack. He addressed it to the only species that might actually respond in time, the humans. The galaxy feared humanity. They came from a world so harsh that most species could not survive there for a day. Their planet had extreme weather, deadly animals, and diseases that could kill in hours. Humans grew up fighting just to stay alive. When they reached the stars, they brought that strength with them. Other species called them and warned against contact. They said humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The Council had advised all peaceful species to avoid them when possible. Right now did not care about any of that. His people were dying. Light years away, Captain Daniel Grant sat in the command chair of the battlecruiser Valiant. His ship was on patrol near the edge of human space, a routine assignment that had been quiet for weeks. He was reading reports when the communications officer spoke up. Captain, we are receiving a distress call. It is on the emergency frequency. Grant straightened. Emergency frequency meant someone was in serious trouble. Put it through. The message played. A translator converted the alien language into English. The voice was calm, but Grant could hear the fear underneath it. The colony was under attack. Civilian targets were being hit. Thousands were already dead. Location, Grant asked. Prime, sir. It is about 8 hours away at maximum slip speed. Who is attacking them? The tactical officer checked the sensor data included in the message. Dominion, sir. Looks like a standard conquest fleet. Grant knew about they were bullies who picked on species that could not defend themselves. They had avoided human space because they knew better than to test Earth's military. Get me Admiral Morgan at Earth Command, Grant ordered. The connection took a few minutes to establish. When Admiral Lisa Morgan appeared on the screen, she looked like she had just finished a long day. That was about to get longer. Captain Grant, what can I do for you? We received a distress call from a colony. They are attacking civilian targets. They have about an hour before their shields fail completely. Morgan's expression hardened. She had fought in the border wars and had seen what happened when aggressors went unchecked. They never contacted us before. They were told to avoid human space. They are desperate, Admiral. The Council is not responding. Morgan was quiet for a moment. Grant knew what she was thinking. Getting involved would cause political problems. The Council did not like it when humans acted without permission. But Morgan had not risen to admiral by avoiding hard decisions. "How many ships do you have in your patrol group?" 17, ma'am. Mix of battle cruisers, destroyers, and support craft." "That will have to do. You have authorization to render assistance. Third Fleet will follow as soon as we can scramble them." "Understood, Admiral. We are moving now." Grant cut the connection and turned to his crew. "All ships, this is Captain Grant. Set course for prime, maximum slip speed, combat stations. We have civilians to protect." The Valiant and its sister ships entered slip space. They were not the biggest fleet humanity had. They were not the or the most advanced. But they were 8 hours away from people who needed help, and that was enough. On Prime, the situation grew worse. The shields finally failed. Troops landed in force, rounding up civilians and herding them into makeshift prison camps. Warlord, commander of the fleet, watched from his flagship with satisfaction. "Any resistance?" he asked. "None, Warlord. They have no military. They are cooperating with processing." "Good. Begin loading the cargo ships. We will take the healthy ones as laborers, execute the rest." Was among those forced into the camps. He stood with thousands of others in an open field, surrounded by armed guards. He had not heard back from his distress call. Perhaps the humans had ignored it. Perhaps they did not care about one small colony of people they had never met. The guards were organizing people into lines, knew what that meant. They were sorting who would live and who would die. Then something changed. The guards stopped. They looked up at the sky, their weapons lowered slightly as confusion spread through their ranks. Followed their gaze. At first he saw nothing. Then he noticed the stars were wrong. Some of them were moving. No, not stars, ships. On his flagship, Warlord received the sensor alerts with disbelief. 17 ships just dropped out of slip space, his sensor officer reported. "They are not." "Then who are they?" The officer checked his readings twice before answering. "Human, Warlord. They are human warships." Laughed humans that had come. This would be entertaining, 40 ships against 17 human vessels. The humans were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. They must be fools. "Open a channel," ordered. "Let me speak to these. I will enjoy teaching them why they should have stayed in their own space." But as the channel opened and he prepared to issue his threats, did not yet understand the mistake he had made. The humans had not come to negotiate. They had not come to observe. They had come because someone called for help. And humanity always answered that call. The Valiant led the human formation into Prime's orbit with the precision of a blade. Behind Grant's flagship came 4 more battle cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 4 support frigates. They moved in a pattern that looked random but was actually carefully planned. Each ship knew its role. Commander Holmes stood in the operations center, her hands moving across holographic displays. She was coordinating 17 ships at once, tracking every vessel, monitoring the planet's surface, and planning attack vectors. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes never stopped moving. "Flagship is hailing us, Captain," the communications officer said. "Put it through," Grant replied. The showed a warlord. He was massive, covered in thick scales and battle scars. His eyes were the color of old blood. When he spoke, his voice was full of arrogance. "I am Warlord. You have entered a military operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Grant did not move from his chair. His voice was calm and cold. "This is Captain Daniel Grant of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are attacking a civilian population. Release your prisoners immediately and withdraw your forces." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You dare give me orders? I command 40 warships. You have 17. Do you not understand numbers?" "We understand them fine," Grant said. "We also understand that you are executing unarmed civilians. That ends now." "Or what? You will fight us," leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "Your ships are outnumbered. Your reputation means nothing here. Leave now or join thee in the camps." Grant's expression did not change. "You had your chance." He made a cutting motion and the channel closed. Looked up from her console. "Orders, Captain." "Send the signal. Alpha pattern, protect the civilians at all costs." The human ships suddenly scattered, though it looked like panic. Their formation broke apart with no obvious pattern, smiled, they were running. Then the first human weapons fired. The destroyer Liberty launched a spread of missiles that moved faster than anything in the arsenal. They weaved through defensive fire like living things. 3 cruisers tried to intercept them. The missiles adjusted course and struck the cruisers from unexpected angles. Shields flared and failed. Hull plating tore apart. "All fighters launch," Grant ordered. From the Valiant and the other battle cruisers, squadrons of human fighters poured into space. They were small and fast, piloted by men and women who had trained in Earth's punishing gravity. Lieutenant Jake led the first squadron, his fingers dancing across his controls. "Gold Squadron, form on me," Jake said over the comm. "We are going for their carrier groups." The fighters moved through the formation like sharks through water. Point Defense tried to track them, but the human pilots were too fast, too unpredictable. They had grown up in a world where everything wanted to kill them. Fighting in the vacuum of space was just another Tuesday. Jake's targeting computer locked onto a carrier. These big ships held the troops that were on the planet. Take them out and the ground forces had no reinforcements. "Fox 3, Jake said calmly, launching his missiles. The carrier tried to turn, but it was too slow. Human missiles punched through its hangar bay doors and detonated inside. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as its own munitions cooked off. On the planet's surface, Colonel Amy Richardson was already moving. Her dropship had launched from the Valiant the moment they entered orbit. Now it was screaming through the atmosphere with 39 other dropships behind it. 2 minutes to landing zone," the pilot called out. Amy checked her gear one more time. She was a career soldier, 20 years in the Earth Defense Force. She had fought pirates, put down rebellions, and defended colonies. She was good at her job. Behind her sat 40 soldiers, all volunteers for the first drop wave. "Listen up," Amy said. "Intelligence shows 3 main prison camps. Our job is to secure the prisoners and hold until the main force arrives. Expect heavy resistance. They do not like giving up their prizes." "Rules of engagement, Colonel?" Sergeant Blake asked. He was young but steady, the kind of soldier who kept his head when things went bad. "Protect the civilians. Anyone pointing a weapon at it is hostile. Anyone surrendering gets detained. Everyone else gets through us first." The drop ship shook as it entered the final descent. Through the windows, Amy could see fires burning across the colony. They had not been gentle. The ships landed hard in a field near the largest camp. Ramps dropped and human soldiers poured out in organized chaos. They moved in teams, covering each other, securing the perimeter in seconds. Amy could see the camp ahead. Chain fences surrounded an open area where thousands of huddled together. Guards stood at intervals, weapons ready. They had seen the human ships land and were forming up for a fight. "Breach teams move," Amy ordered. Sergeant Blake led his squad toward the main gate. The guards opened fire. Human body armor absorbed the impacts, did not slow down. He reached the gate, placed a charge, and stepped back. The explosion tore the gate apart, and his squad rushed through, weapons up. The guards found themselves facing soldiers who were faster, stronger, and angrier than anything they had encountered before. The fight was brief and brutal. Human soldiers had trained for this. They had drilled in urban combat, hostage rescue, and fighting in heavy gravity. They had trained to intimidate civilians. It was not a fair match. In orbit, the battle was turning into a disaster for their 40 ships were discovering that numbers did not mean victory. Human weapons were designed to fight on a world where a storm could kill you and predators hunted in packs. They brought that lethality to space. Commander Holmes watched her board with satisfaction. "Fleet is down to 32 combat-effective ships, Captain. They are trying to form a defensive sphere around their flagship." "Do not let them," Grant said. "Target their command ship, all batteries." The Valiant came about, presenting its full broadside to the flagship. The other battle cruisers followed suit. For a moment, space was quiet. Then the human ships fired. Beams of coherent energy crossed the distance in heartbeats. Kinetic rounds followed, moving at significant fractions of light speed. The flagship's shields held for 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The ship's armor proved tougher, but not tough enough. Holes appeared in its hull. Atmosphere vented. Internal explosions flashed behind its windows. "Their flagship is dead in space," reported. "They are calling for assistance." On the planet watched as human soldiers moved through the camp. They were different from what he expected. Yes, they were dangerous. Their movements spoke of controlled violence ready to be unleashed. But they were also careful. When they found injured, they stopped to help. When children cried, they offered comfort. One soldier, a young woman with the rank insignia of a corporal, knelt beside a child who was sobbing. The girl, no more than 8 seasons old, was calling for her mother. "Hey, it is okay," the soldier said gently. Corporal Hayes had a younger sister back home. She knew how to talk to scared kids. "What is your name?" "Sierra," the child whispered. "Hi, Sierra, we are here to help. Can you tell me where your mom is?" Sierra pointed to a group of being held separately, made a quick radio call, and 2 soldiers moved to that group. Minutes later, they brought Sierra's mother back. The reunion made smile despite the situation around her. "See," said, "we keep our promises." Sergeant Blake approached Colonel Amy Richardson with a report. "Camp is secure, Colonel. No human casualties, minimal civilian injuries. The guards either surrendered or did not make it." Amy nodded. "Good work. Get medical teams in here. I want every checked by a doctor. Set up a defensive perimeter. I do not want any surprises." "Yes, ma'am." Paused. "Colonel, they are asking who we are. They want to know why we came." "Tell them the truth. They called for help," we answered. In orbit, Warlord stared at his status board with disbelief. In 2 hours, the humans had destroyed or disabled half his fleet. His flagship was barely functional. His ground forces were being pushed back on all fronts. This was supposed to be an easy conquest. "Get me the human commander," he snarled. Captain Grant's face appeared on his screen. The human looked no different than before. Calm, cold, dangerous. "Are you ready to discuss terms?" Grant asked. Wanted to refuse. He wanted to order his remaining ships to ram the human vessels, to die in glory rather than surrender. But he was also a survivor. He knew when a battle was lost. "What are your terms?" he asked, the words bitter in his mouth. "Unconditional surrender. Your ships will power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your ground forces will withdraw to designated areas. You will release all prisoners immediately. You will submit to galactic justice for your crimes." And if I refused, the surrender took effect within minutes. Ships powered down their weapons and waited for human boarding parties. On the ground, soldiers threw down their arms and moved to collection points. They had heard what happened to those who resisted. They chose to live. Captain Daniel Grant stood in the Valiant's hangar bay as the first shuttle from the flagship docked. Marines stood ready with weapons trained on the exit. When the door opened, Warlord stepped out. Without his armor and weapons, he looked smaller, defeated. Grant walked forward until he was face to face with the commander. "You will be transferred to a holding cell. When the council arrives, you will answer for attacking civilians. Until then, you are our prisoner." Said nothing. What could he say? He had lost to an inferior force. The shame would follow him forever. "Take him away," Grant ordered. As the Marines led off, Commander Holmes approached. "Captain, we are getting damage assessments from the fleet. Most ships are salvageable but will need major repairs. Should we disable them permanently?" "No, strip their weapons systems and place guards on each ship. The Council can decide what to do with them. Our job was to stop the attack, not destroy the—" Smiled slightly. "Some of the crew are disappointed. They wanted to finish the job." "I know, but we are not here to commit genocide. We stopped a war crime. That is enough." On the planet's surface, the liberation was in full swing. Dr. Helen Carter had set up a field hospital in what used to be a community center. She moved between patients with practiced efficiency, treating injuries and calming fears. Helen was not military. She was a civilian volunteer with Doctors Without Borders, the organization that followed human military operations to provide medical care. She had seen war zones across the galaxy. This one was mild compared to some, but it still made her angry. "Broken arm here," a medic called. "Looks like a guard beat him." Helen moved to the patient, a male who flinched when she approached. "It is okay," she said softly. "I am a doctor. I need to look at your arm." She examined the injury. Clean break, easily fixed with the medical technology they had. "You are going to be fine. This will hurt for a moment, then feel much better." The bone setter hummed as it worked. The gasp, but the pain faded quickly. Helen wrapped the arm properly and moved to the next patient. There were hundreds waiting. Colonel Amy Richardson found Sergeant Blake near the camp perimeter. He was helping distribute food to the— Children crowded around him, no longer afraid of the human soldiers. "Sergeant, a word," Amy said. Handed out the last of his ration bars and walked over. "Yes, Colonel." "Good work today. Your squad secured the camp with 0 civilian casualties. That is not easy when the enemy is using prisoners as shields. Thank you, ma'am. The troops did well. They kept their discipline. Amy nodded. I am putting you in for a commendation. You earned it. She paused. How are you holding up? Looked back at I am fine, Colonel. Just glad we got here in time. We almost did not. If Grant had waited for full authorization, a lot of these people would be dead. Then I am glad he did not wait. Ambassador approached them cautiously. He had been released from the camp an hour ago, but had stayed to help coordinate relief efforts. Now he needed to speak with the human commanders. Excuse me, he said. Colonel Richardson, I am Ambassador. I sent the distress call that brought you here. Amy turned and offered her hand, took it carefully, nodding the strength in her grip. Ambassador, you did the right thing calling us. I was told never to contact humans. The council said your species was too dangerous. Dangerous? Amy looked around at her soldiers helping civilians. Is that what you see here? Followed her gaze. Human soldiers were building shelters, distributing supplies, treating the wounded, and playing with children. They were efficient and kind in equal measure. No, admitted. I see people who came to help when no one else would. I see soldiers who put themselves between my people and harm. I see why you are called, but not in the way the council meant. What way is that? You are dangerous to those who threaten innocents. You are dangerous to bullies and tyrants, but to those in need you are something else. You are hope. Amy was quiet for a moment. We are just people, Ambassador. We saw someone needed help and we came. Any decent species would do the same. But they did not. The council watched and did nothing. Only humans answered. A young girl approached them. It was Sierra, the child Corporal Hayes had helped earlier. She looked up at Amy with wide eyes. Are you really from Earth? Sierra asked. Amy knelt down to her level. Yes, I am. Have you heard of Earth? My teacher said it is a scary place. She said everything there tries to kill you. Well, she is not completely wrong. Earth can be harsh, but it taught us to be strong and to protect each other. That is why we are here, to protect people like you. Sierra considered this. You are nice for scary people. Amy laughed. It was the first time she had laughed all day. Thank you. That might be the best compliment I ever received. In orbit, Lieutenant Jake brought his fighter in for landing. His squadron had just finished patrol, making sure no ships tried to escape. Now he was exhausted and looking forward to rest. As he climbed out of his cockpit, his wingman approached. Hell of a day, Lieutenant. Hell of a day, Jake agreed. How is your bird? Few scratches, nothing major. You hear about the pilots. What about them? Most of them refused to fight us in the end. Turns out stories about human pilots are widespread. They knew what would happen if they engaged. Jake shook his head. Reputation can be useful, means less people have to die. Think the council will make trouble for us? Probably. We did technically intervene in another species conflict without authorization. But Grant will handle it. That is above our pay grade. In the Valiant's ready room, Captain Grant was having that exact conversation with Admiral Lisa Morgan. The Third Fleet had arrived, and Morgan wanted a full report. So you started a war with the Dominion, Morgan said. She did not sound angry, just tired. I stopped a war crime, Grant corrected. There is a difference. The Council will not see it that way. They will say we overstepped our authority. They will demand apologies and reparations. Let them demand. We saved over 4,000 civilians. That is worth whatever political headache comes next. Morgan sighed. I agree, but this sets a precedent. Every time someone is attacked, they will call us now. We cannot be the galaxy's police force. Why not? Someone has to do it. The Council clearly will not. Because we have our own problems, Daniel. Earth has colonies to protect, trade routes to secure, and threats of our own to deal with. We cannot fight everyone's battles. Grant was quiet for a moment. Admiral, I understand the strategic concerns. I do. But when someone calls for help, what are we supposed to do? Ignore them. Let them die because helping might be inconvenient. Of course not, but we need to be smart about this. We cannot save everyone. We can save some. That has to be enough. Morgan looked at her captain. She had known Daniel Grant for 15 years. He was a good officer, maybe one of the best. But he had a problem with walking away from people in need. It made him heroic. It also made him a liability. Finish your relief operations, Morgan said. Then we are pulling back to human space. The council wants a meeting and they want you there. Understood, Admiral. The next day stood before a memorial being erected in the center of the largest camp. It was a simple thing, a stone pillar with names carved into it. Names of who had died before the humans arrived. Names of who had died in the liberation. Names of the human pilot who had been shot down covering an evacuation ship. Corporal Hayes stood beside him with Sierra. The little girl held his hand tightly. "What will happen now?" asked. "We will stay until you are safe," said. "Then we will go home. And if the return, then we will come back. You have our frequency now. If you need help, call us." Sierra looked up at, "Will I see you again?" Knelt down and hugged the child. "I hope so. Maybe when you are older you can visit Earth. I can show you my home." "Is it really scary there?" "Sometimes, but it is also beautiful. We have mountains that touch the sky, oceans deeper than you can imagine, and storms that light up the night. It is a hard place to live, but it made us who we are." Watch them, he was beginning to understand humans. They came from a world that tried to kill them every day. That should have made them cruel and ruthless. Instead, it taught them the value of helping each other survive. It taught them that the strong must protect the weak. That was why when called, the humans answered. Not because they had to, because they believed someone should. 3 weeks after the liberation of Prime, Captain Daniel Grant stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from hundreds of species. Today it felt more like a courtroom than a diplomatic hall. The council speaker, a named, looked down from his elevated platform. His species valued rules and order above all else. He did not look pleased. "Captain Grant," began, "you stand accused of violating galactic law by intervening in the internal affairs of the Dominion. How do you respond?" Grant stood straight, hands behind his back. Commander Holmes sat in the observer section, along with Ambassador and several other survivors. The gallery was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. "Internal affairs," Grant said. "They were executing civilians, they were taking slaves. That is not an internal affair. That is a crime against sapient beings." "The sovereignty over those systems was recognized by this council," replied. "You had no authority to interfere." "Then your recognition was a mistake." The chamber erupted in noise. Species arguing with each other, some supporting Grant, others condemning him, called for order. "Captain, you do not have the right to decide which governments are legitimate. That authority belongs to this council." Grant looked around the chamber. "And where was the council when they called for help? Where were you when civilians were being murdered? You were here, having meetings and following procedures while people died." "We have protocols for such situations." "Your protocols are worthless if they come too late." His face hardened. "Watch your tone, Captain. You are addressing the Galactic Council." "I am addressing a group that watched genocide begin and did nothing. If that is what the Council represents, then maybe humanity was right to keep our distance." A representative stood up. It was, "Speaker, if I may." Looked annoyed but nodded. "Ambassador, you may speak." Walked to the center of the chamber. "I am the one who sent the distress call to humanity. I violated the Council's recommendation to avoid contact with. I did this because my people were dying and the Council was silent." "We were gathering information," said. "You were watching us die." His voice was sharp. 4,000 of my people survived because humans acted. How many would have survived if we waited for the Council?" "That is not the point." "That is exactly the point." Turned to address the entire chamber. "Humanity is called dangerous. We are told to fear them, to avoid them. But when we needed help, they came. They risked their lives for people they had never met. They asked nothing in return. Tell me, honored council members, which of your species would have done the same?" The chamber was silent. Let the question hang in the air. "Humanity did not invade space," continued. "They responded to a distress call. They stopped a war crime. They freed prisoners and provided medical care. They treated us with kindness and respect. If this is what dangerous looks like, then I welcome it." Shifted in his seat. "Nevertheless, the law is clear." "Then change the law," said. "Because if the law says we must watch innocents die while we follow procedures, then the law is broken." Another representative stood. This one was from a militaristic species that had clashed with humans before. "They paint a pretty picture. but we know what humans are capable of. They destroyed half a fleet in hours. What happens when they turn that power against the rest of us? Holmes stood up. May I address that question? Nodded. Moved to stand beside Grant. The representative makes a good point. Humans are capable of great violence. Earth made us that way, but violence is a tool. What matters is how we use it. And how do we know you will always use it for good? They asked. You do not, just like we do not know what any species will do, but you can look at our history. Humanity has been in the galaxy for 30 years. In that time, we have fought 3 wars. Every single one was defensive. We have never conquered territory. We have never enslaved populations. We have never committed genocide. You have certainly come close, another representative muttered. Grant spoke up. We are not perfect, but we try to be better. That is all anyone can do. Dr. Helen Carter stood from the gallery. May I speak? Looked tired. This hearing was not going the way he planned. Go ahead. Helen moved to the front. I am Dr. Helen Carter. I run medical relief operations. I have worked in war zones across the galaxy. I have seen the best and worst of every species represented here. Your point, asked. My point is that I have seen soldiers execute prisoners. I have seen officials turn away refugees. I have seen council member species commit the same atrocities you accuse humans of contemplating. The difference is that when humans do wrong, we try to make it right. We hold ourselves accountable. We all hold ourselves accountable, a representative protested. Do you? Then where are the trials for the council members who ignored the distress calls? Where is the accountability for a system that lets civilians die while you debate procedures? The chamber erupted again. Species shouting at each other, accusations flying back and forth, tried to restore order, but it took several minutes. Finally, an older representative stood. She was from the Vex, one of the founding species of the council. Her name was Elder, and her word carried weight. Enough, she said quietly. The chamber fell silent. We are arguing about the wrong thing. The question is not whether humans broke the law. They did. The question is whether the law serves justice. The law is the law, said. And laws can be changed, replied. They are correct. Our current system failed them. It will fail others. We need to decide if we want a council that follows rules or one that protects innocence. We cannot have humans policing the galaxy, someone said. Why not? Asked. Not humans alone, obviously, but a joint force. Multiple species working together to respond to exactly these situations. A rapid response team with the authority to act when civilians are threatened. The idea hung in the air. Grant could see species considering it. Some looked interested, others looked horrified. That would require changing the council charter, said. Then we change it, unless the council wants to admit that we care more about procedure than lives. The debate continued for hours. Grant was eventually dismissed to wait outside, joined him in the corridor. That went better than I expected, she said. Did it? I basically called the council useless. You said what needed to be said. So did and Dr. Carter. Think anything will change? Shrugged, maybe. Or maybe they will pass some resolutions, feel good about themselves, and go back to business as usual. Lieutenant Jake appeared around a corner. Captain, you are needed back on the Valiant. We are getting reports. What kind of reports? More distress calls, 3 different systems, all under attack by various groups, and all of them are asking specifically for human assistance. Grant closed his eyes. Admiral Morgan had been right. They had set a precedent. Now everyone who was attacked would call Earth for help. What is Admiral Morgan saying? Grant asked. She wants you back in command. The 3rd Fleet is being mobilized. Looked at Grant. This is what you wanted, is it not? A chance to help people who need it. I wanted the galaxy to help people who need it, not just humanity carrying the burden. Well, until the galaxy gets its act together, I guess we are it. Grant nodded slowly. Tell the Admiral I am on my way. Yes, sir. Start planning operations for 3 simultaneous deployments. If we are going to do this, we do it right. Back on Prime, Sergeant Blake was training volunteers. After the liberation, many young wanted to learn to defend themselves. They wanted to be ready if the ever returned. One of his students was Sierra, the little girl Corporal Hayes had helped during the battle. She was too young for real combat training, but taught her basic awareness and safety skills. Remember, said to the group, fighting is always the last option. If you can avoid a conflict, do it. But if you cannot avoid it, do not hesitate. Hesitation gets people killed. Sierra raised her hand. Sergeant Blake, why did humans come to help us? We are not part of your alliance. Thought about how to answer. Because you needed help and we could provide it. That is enough reason. But you risked your lives for strangers. That is what good people do. They help even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous. My father taught me that. Earth taught all of us that. Your world is harsh, another student said. That must make you angry at the universe. Shook his head. It makes us appreciate what we have. When you grow up fighting to survive, you understand how precious life is. That is why we fight to protect it. The training session ended and they dispersed. Sierra lingered behind. Sergeant Blake, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I could visit Earth someday? Corporal Hayes said I could. Smiled, I think that could be arranged. When you are older, we would be happy to show you our world. It is tough, but it is worth seeing. I want to be strong like humans. I want to protect people. You do not need to be human to be strong. You just need to care about others and be willing to act. That is the real strength. Sierra nodded seriously. I will remember that. As she walked away, watched her go. The galaxy was changing. Humans had shown that someone would stand up to bullies and tyrants, that someone would answer when innocents called for help. It was a heavy responsibility, but it was also the right thing to do. Back on the Valiant, Grant reviewed the distress calls. 3 systems, all under attack, all asking for human intervention. The Council was still debating. Earth Command was mobilizing, and somewhere out there, people were dying while everyone else discussed procedures. Grant made his decision. Helm, plot a course to the nearest system, maximum slip speed. Sir, we do not have authorization yet, the helmsman said. We have authorization from the people who need help. That is enough. Take us in. 6 months after Prime, the situation had changed completely. The human Third Fleet had grown to include ships from 7 other species. What started as Earth's response to a single distress call had become something larger. They called it the Alliance Rapid Response Force. Captain Daniel Grant stood on the bridge of the Valiant, but now his tactical display showed more than just human ships. There were medical frigates, destroyers, and even a few scout ships. Species that had once feared or dismissed humanity now fought alongside them. Commander Holmes reviewed the latest intelligence reports. We have confirmation on the captain. Their central government has agreed to the treaty terms, full disarmament and reparations to affected colonies. What about the outlying warlords? Grant asked. Most have surrendered. A few are still holding out, but they do not have the resources for extended conflict. The Dominion is effectively finished. Grant nodded. It had taken 6 months and 17 battles, but they had dismantled the threat. More importantly, they had done it without genocide or conquest. Civilians were left alone. Only the military leadership faced prosecution. Admiral Morgan is hailing us, the communications officer said. Admiral Lisa Morgan appeared on screen. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. The stress of coordinating multiple fleet operations showed on her face, but she was smiling. Captain Grant, I have news from the Galactic Council. Good news or bad news? Both. The Council has officially recognized the Alliance Rapid Response Force. You now have legal authority to intervene in humanitarian crises. And the bad news? You are in command of it. Congratulations, Admiral Grant. Grant blinked. Admiral. The promotion came through this morning. Earth Command felt you earned it. The other Alliance species agreed. Morgan's smile widened. You wanted to help people who needed it. Now you have the authority to do it properly. I do not know what to say. Say you accept, because 3 more distress calls came in this morning. Pirates are raiding trade routes in the Outer Rim. You are the closest response force. Grant looked at, she was grinning. Looks like we stay busy, sir. Looks like it. Tell the fleet to prepare for departure, and start working on crew rotations. If we are going to do this long-term, people need rest. Already on it, Admiral. On Prime, the colony had been rebuilt, better than before, actually. Human engineers had helped design new defensive systems. Architects had created buildings that combined both species' aesthetics. The result was a city that represented cooperation between different worlds. Sergeant Blake, now Lieutenant Blake, walked through the central plaza. A monument stood in the center, a tall structure showing human and figures standing together. Inscribed at the base were the words, "When we called, they answered." Sira ran up to him. She was taller now, almost a teenager. She wore a uniform that mixed and human design elements. She was part of the new colonial defense force, trained by human advisors but serving her own people. "Lieutenant Blake," she said, slightly out of breath. "I heard the news. Captain Grant is now Admiral Grant." "That is right, well-deserved too." "Does this mean you will be leaving?" "Eventually, but not for a while. My assignment here runs for another year, plenty of time to finish your training." Sira smiled with relief. "Good, I still have much to learn." "You are doing well. Your squad leader says you are the best in your class." "I had good teachers. You showed me that strength is not just about fighting. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy." Looked at the monument. "That is the lesson Earth taught us. Power without wisdom is just destruction. Real strength is using that power to protect people who cannot protect themselves." Ambassador approached them. He looked different now, more confident. He had become the representative to the Alliance, speaking for his people in diplomatic matters. "Lieutenant Blake, Sira, good to see you both." Ambassador said, "How was your trip to Earth?" "Eye-opening. Your planet is everything the stories said. Harsh, dangerous, beautiful, but I finally understand where human strength comes from." "Where is that?" "From having to trust each other to survive. On Earth, cooperation is not just a nice idea. It is required. You learn to work together because isolation means death. That is what makes you dangerous to tyrants. You already know how to unite against threats." Sira looked up at the monument. "Will there always be threats?" Sighed, "Probably. The galaxy is a big place with many species. Some will always choose violence over peace. But now there is a force ready to stop them. That is something." "I want to join the response force," Sira said suddenly. "When I am old enough, I want to help others like humans helped us." Put a hand on her shoulder. "That is a good goal, but remember it is not about glory or adventure. It is hard work. You will see terrible things. You will make difficult choices. Are you ready for that?" "I am, because someone has to do it. If not me, then who?" Smiled. "You really did learn from us." In the Galactic Council chambers, things had changed too. Elder had been elected as the new speaker, replacing who had resigned. Her first act was to reform the emergency response protocols. Now, when a distress call came in, the council could authorize immediate action instead of waiting for committees to debate. She stood before the assembled representatives, preparing to address a topic that had been controversial for months. "The Alliance Response Force has operated for 6 months," began. "In that time, they have responded to 43 crises. They have saved an estimated 200,000 lives. They have done this while adhering to strict rules of engagement, treating prisoners humanely, and respecting local sovereignty." A representative stood. "They have also started 14 military conflicts." "They have ended 14 ongoing attacks on civilian populations," corrected. "There is a difference. Every conflict they entered was already in progress. They simply chose a side, the side of the innocent." "What gives them that right?" another asked. "The same thing that gives any of us that right, the ability to help and the will to act. The question before this council is simple. Do we officially endorse their actions or do we condemn them?" The vote was not even close. 70% of the council endorsed the alliance. Another 20% abstained. Only 10% voted against, mostly species that had territorial disputes with humanity. The Alliance Response Force was now an official galactic institution. Lieutenant Jake, now commander, led a training exercise for the new mixed-species fighter squadrons. Human pilots flew alongside, and even a few brave. The combination of different species' strengths created something more effective than any single species could achieve. "Remember," Jake told his squadron over the comm, "we all have different abilities. Pilots have better sensor awareness. Pilots have faster reflexes. Pilots are better at formation flying. Humans have better endurance and adaptability. Use your strengths and cover each other's weaknesses." The exercise began. The squadron moved through a simulated combat scenario, working together to achieve their objectives. It was not perfect. There were communication issues and coordination problems, but it was improving. After the exercise, Jake met with his command staff. It included officers from 4 different species. "How did we do?" Jake asked. "Better," said his second in command. "Response times are down by 8%. Coordination errors are down by 15%. Still not good enough. We need to be faster." "We are getting there. Give it time." "Time is what we do not have. Every day we train is a day someone might need help." "Then it is good that we are not the only squadron training. The Alliance is building 6 more carrier groups. By next year, we will have rapid response teams in every sector." Jake nodded. "That is the goal, be everywhere we are needed." Back on the Valiant, Admiral Daniel Grant sat in his ready room with a cup of coffee. It was late in the ship's night cycle. Most of the crew was asleep. This was his time to think. A chime sounded. "Come in," Grant said. Dr. Helen Carter entered. She had joined the Valiant as the chief medical officer for the Alliance forces. "Admiral, wanted to check on you." "I am fine, Doctor." "You are stressed, tired, and carrying the weight of 17 fleets on your shoulders. But sure, you are fine." Grant smiled slightly. "When did you become a psychiatrist?" "When I started working with soldiers who think they are invincible." Helen sat down across from him. "Daniel, you have done amazing things, but you cannot save everyone. You know that, right?" "I know, but I can try." "And that is admirable. But you need to take care of yourself too. The Alliance needs you healthy, not burned out. There are so many calls for help. Every day more come in. Pirates, raiders, corrupt governments, natural disasters. How do we choose who to help first?" "You do the best you can. You prioritize. You trust your people to handle what they can. And you accept that you cannot fix everything." Grant was quiet for a moment. "When I was a kid, I read about Earth's old wars, the suffering that happened because people stood by and did nothing. I swore I would never be that person. I would never watch innocent people suffer and just walk away." "And you have not. But you are one person, Daniel. Even with a fleet behind you, you cannot be everywhere. That is why we are building this alliance, so more people can answer the call." "I hope it is enough." "It will be, because you showed the galaxy that someone will stand up, that someone will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Others are following that example. That is your real victory." Helen stood to leave. "Get some sleep, Admiral. Tomorrow we have more people to help." After she left, Grant looked at the star map on his wall. It showed the galaxy with Alliance territories marked. It was a small area, really. So much space left. So many places where people might need help. But for the first time in 6 months, Grant felt hopeful. The Alliance was growing. Other species were joining. The Galactic Council was changing. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy was becoming a place where calling for help actually meant someone would come. His console beeped. Another distress call. Grant read it quickly. A colony ship had been damaged by an asteroid strike. They needed medical assistance and rescue operations. Grant activated the ship comm. "All hands, this is the Admiral. We have a rescue operation. Set course for the Beta Quadrant. Maximum slip speed. Time to go to work." The Valiant's engines powered up. Around it, the Alliance fleet moved in formation. Human ships, all moving together with one purpose. Someone had called for help, and the Alliance was answering. Because that was what they did now. That was what they would always do. When someone in peril called, the fleet and its allies would answer. Not with conquest, not with domination, but with the fury of those who refused to let innocents suffer. And that made all the difference. The Valiant and its fleet entered slip space. They were going to war again, not because they wanted to, because someone had to. And humanity would always answer that call. That night, Captain Grant sat alone in his quarters, writing his report. He knew what was coming. The Council would demand explanations. Politicians would debate whether human intervention was legal. They would complain about aggression. None of it mattered. He had done the right thing. When he closed his eyes, he did not see legal arguments or political consequences. He saw 4,000 alive because he made a choice. That was enough. Grant's expression finally changed. His eyes went hard. "Then we stop being polite. Your choice, warlord, surrender or die. You have 5 minutes to decide." The channel closed, looked around his damaged bridge. He looked at his broken fleet. He thought about the human soldiers on the planet who had cut through his best troops like they were nothing. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "We surrender." Captain Daniel Grant looked at the tactical display, 40 ships to his 17. Under normal circumstances, those odds would be concerning. But these were not normal circumstances. They had attacked civilians. They had executed prisoners. They had made this personal. "All ships weapons free," Grant said quietly. "Show them why we are called."